Sheldon oversells his weapons a bit, I reckon. He describes the Splat Roller as an easy handling roller that's a great introduction to the rolling life. Me, personally, I ain't so sure. It's a somewhat disappointing, hard to maximise middleweight roller that often finds itself outclassed and outpaced in SalmonRun. But if you watch this video, I think I can share a bit of wisdom that may help you when you're given this weapon in SalmonRun. Stats. The Splat Roller's damage output and ink efficiency is average, with nothing really special to say about it. It does 125 crush damage on anything that comes into contact with its hitbox, certainly more than the weaker rollers, but not enough to mitigate knockback. Knockback, which is where you bounce off of enemies, will happen often with the Splat Roller, and it's something you'll need to learn to play around rather than try to solve. At 125 crush damage, the only enemies you can defeat by rolling are Small Fry and Chum, meaning you better get used to bouncing off of enemies. For its flick damage, the Splat Roller has a nice consistent 200 damage for both its horizontal and vertical flicks. This isn't objectively bad when strictly talking about damage, it is firmly in the middle of its class, and I think for all the negatives we're going to talk about in this video, 200 damage per swing is good. It two-shots cohocks, for example, and it allows you to put substantial damage on non-armoured enemies when you lean into your crush. Like all rollers, there is fall-off, meaning that the strength of the flick lessens with distance travelled. The minimum you will hit an enemy for is 70 for both horizontal and vertical flicks. After flicking an enemy, you will be able to hit multiple hitboxes if you lean into your enemy. I speak more about this in the Carbon Roller guide. However, I think where the Splat Roller struggles is when you recognise its flick rate is quite slow when compared to the rest of its class. 41 frames for horizontal swings and 56 frames for vertical flings. Horizontal swings are slower than every roller except for the Dynamo, but its vertical flicks are faster in comparison. Being only slower than the Carbon and Big Swig is kind of a funny situation to find itself in. In isolation, the Splat Roller doesn't feel too slow, but I often wonder why it doesn't feel faster or have a niche that separates it from the rest of the pack. It paints relatively fine and its range is moderate. You only really outrange the Carbon here, meaning you'll need to get closer to your enemies to ensure that you get that full 200 damage. Ink recovery is moderate, taking 20 frames to start recovering ink after rolling, 45 frames after horizontal flicks, and 60 frames after vertical flicks. You can roll for around 15 seconds before the ink tank runs out, and you have approximately 16 flicks on a full ink tank. When you throw a bomb, you'll have about 5 flicks left, which is fine, but often you'll find your weapon is actually way more efficient in terms of AoE damage. Bombs do give you range, but aside from that, I find they don't really help the Splat Roller. Boss slaying. Steelheads take 2 direct hits to defeat. Vertical flicks are often more consistent given the height and the range, but horizontal flicks can work if you can match the height of the bomb. Slamming lids and steel eels have exposed points that don't damage you for the most part. You can flick and then crush them. This is often the quickest way to defeat them, as otherwise it will take 3 flicks. Big shots are similar. You can hit them, then repeatedly roll into them to crush them. It's the fastest way to manage them. Otherwise it's 6 flicks in total to defeat them. For fish sticks, it's best to paint the stick and climb it and attack it from the top. Oftentimes you won't quite have the range to hit them from the ground. For stingers, you can crush the individual pots. You would just need to practice with this as it's a bit awkward. You can always flick them if you need to. Moors and flyfish and other bomb dependent bosses are fine, granted you manage your ink tank well. Flipper floppers are easy to paint and then defeat. In addition, you can also damage them by rolling just before they launch out of the ground. Scrappers and drizzlers are annoying for the Splat Roller. This is due to the fact that you will bounce off of them, and this can either waste time or inflict more damage on you. In addition, the way in which they function means that the Splat Roller often finds itself too slow to defeat them in a quick time frame. For scrappers, I often try to stun them for my teammates, and for drizzlers, I try my best to crush them where possible. In addition, it's always beneficial to shoot back torpedoes, as this one-shots them and saves you a lot of time. For drizzlers, you'll need 5 flicks, which is doable in one cycle, but often hard because of knockback and other dangers around you. For scrappers, you'll need 3 flicks to stun it, then 3 flicks to defeat the exposed enemy. For night waves, you will mostly utilise the Splat Roller's ability to manage lessers. It's one of the strengths of this weapon. In rush, you will provide amazing support for your team, keep focused and manage your ink tank well. You can crush all the chum, but you will have knockback from the goldies. Just ensure that you reduce damage on yourself where you can so that you won't go down. For grillers, you can utilise your ability to hit both the griller and the small fry with the flicks. However, I find in most situations the Splat Roller is best used when you're able to just crush small fry. It just makes it easier for everybody else in the team. The same goes for the rest of the night waves. You'll likely find yourself supporting with lessers and egg throwing. King waves can be a bit tricky because most weapons either focus on the kings themselves or the bosses to provide golden eggs. However, the Splat Roller isn't really strong enough to do either of those things. I'll talk more about the role you'll take in a moment, but I honestly recommend looking to see what needs fulfilling within your comp and going from there. You'll likely find that it's support, either with damaging bosses, managing lessers, or just painting around the area needed. You can inflict crush damage on the kings, but it is tricky and you'll often make yourself vulnerable. I often help with bosses because at least this way I can generate golden eggs to help improve the damage that we can inflict. Weapon roll. Like the majority of rollers in SalmonRun, the Splat Roller primarily functions as a supportive weapon, ideally managing supportive slaying. Given its ability to roll and crush, you can help remove annoying threats that slower, heavier weapons often struggle against, things like turf in your own feet, creating escape paths, and defeating smaller enemies like small fry and chum. In addition, given its flicks, you can help provide AoE damage on multiple enemies, and using the stage to help will make this easier, taking higher positions or utilising choke points, for example. Lessers overall are the best use of the Splat Roller, and it's something I'd really recommend focusing on if you feel like you don't know what else to do with it. There is a bit of tech to using a weapon like the Splat Roller, so if you're new to the game or struggle with this, then defeating lessers and protecting your teammates is often a good use of this weapon. As mentioned, you can roll away from enemies too, providing paint for yourself and your teammates. This is always worth remembering as you may be paired with ink and efficient weapons, and you can provide invaluable support this way. In most situations, the Splat Roller is not the weapon with the highest DPS, the best ink tank, or the best painter, or even the fastest. Oftentimes there will be another weapon in the team that does what you can do, but better. With subpar weapons like the Splat Roller, it's key to work within the few strengths you do have, rather than trying to use the weapon in a way that doesn't benefit you or your team. Attempting to defeat a steelhead when you're paired with a charger feels wasteful. Sure, you can do it, it's not that hard, but isn't it better to let your teammate with the charger one-shot it, whilst you ensure that there aren't any enemies around attacking them? I've spoken about this in other videos, but supportive weapons are often disregarded and misused because the game doesn't tell you that support is a good thing. There aren't any gold badges for assists, right? So I understand a desire to go out there and be the big slayer on your team. Every weapon can be a slayer in SalmonRun, and as we've spoken about, the Splat Roller on a one-to-one basis actually doesn't have any issues with any particular bosses. Some are a bit more time consuming than others, but it isn't hard countered to the point where you may not be able to defeat them. And so given this, it is then entirely possible to take that out into a game and do it, but it becomes harder when there's a countdown, an objective, and several different enemies all attacking you at the same time. And the Splat Roller eventually reaches its limit and it has to back off, either to replenish its ink tank or to survive. When you're comfortable with this weapon and comfortable with the game and its mechanics, and you understand how to move freely within a map and are conscientious of the time, players alive and bosses alive, then you can do anything with it. But to do that, we need to talk more about the weapon's limitations. Limitations. Like a few of the other rollers in SalmonRun, the biggest limitation the Splat Roller faces is the fact that the weapon class overall is quite poor. This is primarily due to the fact that its main mechanism of damaging enemies, rolling, does not effectively manage the spawns due to their high HP and armor. Rollers like the Dynamo and the Grisco Roller are not affected by this because they're able to stun and crush everything rather quickly, but the Splat Roller doesn't. It will bounce off of everything. It will get knocked back by drizzlers and steel eels because their hitbox interferes with the hitbox of the Splat Roller. It can be hard to maneuver around a map that is covered in enemy ink or armoured enemies, and there's a good chance that you still won't defeat any enemies. With the exception of small fry and chum, nothing is defeated by rolling. I spoke about this in my video for Big Swig, and for all intents and purposes, the Splat Roller functions almost identically to that weapon. The only exception really is that the Big Swig has a better ability to paint and has longer range. The Splat Roller doesn't have anything unique weak about it, nothing that makes anybody say this is the reason why this weapon is good. Everything it does is outclassed by other rollers, so it often feels quite poor to use. In PvP, rollers tend to shark and are able to one-hit enemy players within a certain radius, so things like ink tank management, positioning, stealth, they're all extremely different. In SalmonRun, none of those things will help you. The salmonids can smell you, so if you're not attacking them, you're just allowing yourself to be an easy target. It takes time to attack enemies in SalmonRun because at 200 damage for flicks and 125 crush damage, the Splat Roller just feels really weak. And again, much like the Big Swig, if you can't crush enemies effectively, then what about flicking them? 200 damage for the Splat Roller is certainly better than the Big Swig, and I will concede that it does feel more consistent with this weapon, given that its horizontal and vertical flicks deal the same damage, and that you actually get about 16 of these on a full ink tank. It does allow you to flex between rolling and flicking with a bit more freedom than a lot of other rollers, and it's good to recognise this as a positive trait of the weapon. However, because it's a roller, and because in SalmonRun the enemy's HP is quite high, it doesn't always feel like you're able to defeat things as quickly as you should. In a mode centered on a 100-second countdown, all your time should be adequately managed. And I mean this within reason too. I don't expect precision with every second, but you should recognise that if you as a Splat Roller struggle to defeat bosses like Scrappers, then maybe it's best to get teammates to help you. Scrappers take 6 hits to defeat, 3 to stun and then 3 to fully defeat, but this doesn't take into account lessers, big shot rings, missiles, rain, stingers and other explosions. This also doesn't take into account knockback and the weird hitbox issues that you can have with Scrappers. So something that theoretically shouldn't take long does, and it will use way more than the 6 flicks that you'd think. Maybe by the time you've defeated the lessers and ensured the area around the Scrapper is safe, you've used over half of your ink tank and it's taken 15 seconds. Again, the AoE of the roller will help, and its minimum damage of 70 does allow you to hit multiple enemies at once, and this does reduce the need to direct everything, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that a weapon like the Splat Roller will force you to spend more time against enemies that hard counter it. There is simply nothing you can do. Saying all of that, to get the most out of a subpar weapon you need to understand the limitations of it and work around them. Scrappers and Drizzlers are not your strong suit, but any enemy that doesn't have armor or send you flying can actually be managed just fine once you're able to comfortably manage your ink tank and your swings. Lessers and bosses like Big Shots, Slamming Lids and Eels can all be crushed repeatedly, abusing the hitbox of the roller. It's worth getting comfortable with this technique because this allows you to mitigate the time spent trying to defeat them. If there is a trick to getting more damage out of a weapon much faster, wouldn't you want to do it? To use the Splat Roller without doing this makes the weapon overall much harder to see the potential of. With the Splat Roller, you want to support and crush where possible, but you may find yourself limited overall, forcing you to step back or requiring help from your teammates and specials. Learning how to recognise potential snowball situations and being aware of what your team is doing and not doing will help too, as you can preemptively manage threats that could result in a wipe. Playing with weaker weapons forces you to be more aware of everything in the game. It isn't easy to get good results at the Splat Roller, but it is possible. I hope this video helps you appreciate the Splat Roller a bit more, or at the very least gives you a few pointers on how to improve with it. I'll see you guys soon.